Hi everyone, I recently finished The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers, Economic Change and Military Conflict from 1500 to 2000 by Yale history professor Paul Kennedy. While often a dense and challenging read, I absolutely love this book. I should immediately point out that the title is slightly misleading, as it was published in 1987 and not 2000. If you're at all curious about Western history from the last 500 years, you'll receive a tremendous education from this book, with the major theme being how excessive military funding and expansionism ultimately reveals a weak point for rival countries to exploit. It was fascinating to read how the balances of power within Europe constantly shifted until arriving at the bipolar Cold War era, where further conflict would result in mutual nuclear destruction. While I wish for America to prosper for centuries ahead, while reading this book, I couldn't help but reflect on how fleeting any nation's status has been throughout modern history. This book had tons of fascinating explorations. How America ascended into a huge manufacturing giant not too many decades after the Civil War. How the once dominant Habsburg Empire weakened substantially, only for Prussia and Germany to ascend into a huge power in the late 1800s. In an eerie moment, the book even brought up the possibility of Japan unloading their US bonds to destabilize the US economy, which China actually began to employ and Japan hinted at doing during this year's, sadly still ongoing, chaos with US tariff policy. My main gripe with the book is that a lot of interesting 19th century Chinese history was omitted. Little or no mention of the British Opium Wars, Boxer Rebellion, or Taiping Rebellion, which were all fascinating and involved military conflict with the West. Published in 1987, the book also stops right before huge events, such as the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Tiananmen Square massacre, and the Japanese stock market crash. It's too bad the book hasn't been revised, as Paul Kennedy has been active for decades since, having published nearly 24 books, and I can even remember him praising 2024's excellent book, The Struggle for Taiwan. Even with warfare being the main theme of this book, it's written in a very clinical manner and doesn't have much subject matter that will trigger or depress the reader. Modern war crimes and humanitarian crises are mentioned, but not described in detail. Pages 438 through 540 focuses on predicting the future to various degrees of accuracy. Some readers may not be interested in that part, but the rest of the book is a timeless read. If you've found pleasure from reading history books, and you can handle this book's dense style and huge scope, Paul Kennedy's most famous work is definitely worth reading. If you'd like to stick around, here are my top 5 takeaways from the book. Number 1, from page 8. The Decline of 15th Century Chinese Overseas Expansion and Trade. While immense projects and technological innovation was possible when supported by the state, Confucian code discouraged conquest, and bureaucratic and scholarly elites looked down on private enterprise, halting outward expansion. Number 2, from page 61. Elizabeth I protecting France. Despite centuries of Anglo-French warfare, Queen Elizabeth I contributed troops to France in the late 1500s to stave off the huge threat from Spain, arguing, whenever the last day of France came, it would also be the eve of the destruction of England. Number 3, from page 392, on the term Third World Country. Growing up with the connotation that Third World Country simply meant impoverished and underdeveloped, I was surprised to discover that it was originally used by these countries who simply wished to differentiate themselves from the Western or Soviet influence. Number 4, from page 406 and 407, the Vietnam War's effect on the American psyche and global standing. In everything from underestimating the fighting will and tactics of the Vietnamese, problems with American troop discipline, interference with President Johnson's Great Society program, lack of support from American citizens, distraction from the USSR threats, and isolation from the world stage and more, the Vietnam War is arguably a huge turning point in American prestige. And number 5 from page 460, Japanese MITI. Despite the failure of command economies in socialist governments, Japan's Ministry for International Trade and Industry showed tremendous success in promoting, supporting, and dismantling various industries. More research on this is needed. Alright, I hope you enjoyed my look at The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers by Paul Kennedy. Definitely check it out if you're into history. And I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you for watching. Bye.